Right, our website is coming along really nicely now. We're almost finished with everything, but we're going to have a look at how we can put a color overlay on top of this image. That's especially important in this winter section. Now they actually look pretty good as they are. It's just a personal decision, a design decision as to whether you want to do this or not. But it is one way of also creating some consistency between all of your images. If you have lots of different images on your page, you might want to put a color overlay on them. So for example, on the school website, because our color is blue, you might want to have a slight blue tinge to all of your photos just to reinforce that school branding, that school color, and it's the same idea with your website here. So let's have a look at how we can do that. In our IDs that we created earlier, we are going to put a linear gradient, and we're actually going to apply that to the background image itself. So at the start of this line here, just before you have your URL, we're going to add in a linear gradient. And then this requires two colors because of course a gradient goes from one color to another and it changes gradually as you go. So I'm going to just put in, for example purposes, red and then let's say blue. Then I put a comma to separate our linear gradient from our background image. So what this is going to do is put this gradient, color gradient, over the top of that image there. So if we go back to our website, you can see what that looks like now. It has gone from red up the top down to blue at the bottom. It's not what we want at this stage, but it's just one way of illustrating how this is going to work. Okay, so to change this so that it works the way we want, I'm going to put my cursor in where it says red and press Ctrl E on my keyboard. And now remember, we can adjust the opacity by dragging this slider up and down. And so we want to be able to see through our color gradient. So I'm going to drag that down to, let's say, around 0.6, and I'll do the same for this other one here. I'll drag this one down to 0.6. Okay, and like we discussed in one of the other videos, the RGBA is one way of specifying colors, and of course the A is the alpha channel, which is our transparency channel. That's why when we switched from just red to one of these transparent colors, it switched to this style of representing a color, which is, it looks a lot more complicated, but it really isn't too bad. The red, green and blue values are specified there, and then your transparency value there. And because I've specified red, the red value is 255, which is the maximum that it can be. And for the blue value is 255, and the others are 0. So that makes a lot of sense. Now we probably, even though we've changed the transparency, we probably don't want to have it going from red to blue. So I'll just change this color so that it is actually a blue color to start with. And let's just check how that's looking in our live preview. That's much too much of a strong blue color, so I'm going to make it a lot lighter over here. And that looks pretty good. Now we can just copy and paste this linear gradient rule, and I'm going to paste it onto the winter one to make sure it's exactly the same. And of course I have to remember to change this to winter season now rather than summer season, because I just pasted over the top of that. Okay, so now if we look at our live preview, you should be able to see that we have a nice gradient effect on top of there, and it's consistent amongst both of them. It also makes it much easier to read this text, and it creates a nice contrast between the red and the blue overlay that we have there. Now you can play around with the colors, you can tweak them however you like. Notice I haven't put it on this big image we have at the start because I want to keep that nice and crisp and clean, and that is one way of creating some consistency throughout your web page and making it a little bit easier to read that text by creating some contrast between the foreground and the background. The last thing I'm going to do in this video is just put another block of text in below this winter section here, as that's what we had planned originally. So very simply I'll go back to my HTML, and because I'm not fussed about the content that I'm going to have in this case, I'm just going to copy and paste this whole section that we made earlier that has of course the very, very important class name of text block up the top. And I'll put it in under the winter section that we have there. So I'll paste that in there and go back to my live preview. And we can see we've got all that text down underneath the winter section. So our website's coming along nicely. We've got our main bit at the top. we've got a nice little image effect as we scroll. We've got an image gallery, some more scrolling effects on our images with overlays, and all of our text. We just need to add a footer now, and then we're going to look at some finishing touches like adding these links in so that they're working, and possibly even putting in some animation effects as well.